Hello and welcome to GW2NAGVG. My name is Kyle, or Kyle the Savage in game. I'm going to be the one that's primarily hosting this channel, along with a couple others that will be helping me out and doing commentaries with me. This is the first episode, so if you're a veteran GVG player, there's going to be a lot of stuff in here that you will definitely already know, and things we'll be talking about that are extremely basic. But we just want to make sure that someone that's watching this that maybe hasn't GVG'd before is able to understand what we're talking about, even if they have done very little PvP in Guild Wars 2 at all. Today we'll be watching Aggression Ag versus the 9th Legion IX. Aggression is a historically one of the best NA GVG guilds. They've been around a long time. IX is a relatively newer formed guild. Doesn't mean that their players aren't veterans, just means that the guild isn't quite as old. I expected this GVG to be a little bit more one-sided than it was, to be honest. No offense to IX, they're doing a really good job. I've got a lot of friends in that guild too. But this is actually a really cool fight. There's our perspective is from Strigon, who I played with on NACL. His Guardian gameplay is what we're going to be watching, and I'm able to, when I watch Guardian gameplay, I'm able to tell the difference between what a good Guardian and a bad Guardian looks like. But I play Warrior. I've never really played Guardian in this type of setting before, aside from just map completion maybe. And so because of that, I'm not able to tell the difference between what's making a Guardian a good Guardian versus a great Guardian. So with me today to help me commentate on the Guardian gameplay, I have Driggin here, who is currently playing Necromancer in Fun, the guild that I'm a trial in at the moment, but he was also the driver and leader of Hope, on which he played his Guardian the entire time. So he's going to be a little bit more in depth on what the Guardian's role is, and we'll see how this goes. Thanks for watching, guys. Hello everyone, this is Kyle the Savage. We're here with our first episode of GW2NAGVG. This is we're watching from the perspective of Strigon, like I mentioned earlier. This is Aggression versus IX. We're obviously watching a Guardian gameplay here, so I have brought along Driggin because he knows a lot more about Guardian and what the Guardian's supposed to do better than I do. I do know, I can tell you, just some real basic information real quick. The Guardian's part of the Frontline, which consists of just the Warriors and the Guardians. And their job is really to control the engagement. They're where where you can lay the hammer down if you rush right into a group. The Warriors and the Guardians kind of stay together and form somewhat of a train following the driver, usually the player that's targeted there. As you can see right there, Jericho's targeted. And yeah, how's it going, Dragon?
Hey, how's it going, Kyle? Pretty good. So what we're looking at right now, Strigon's Guardian right now, he's pretty much running a standard meta build, which is like the 00644 Guardians. He's got the altruistic healing, he's got obviously selfless daring, dodge rolls, and the empowering might trait, as well as the double stability. So what you really see from that, he's running holeback runes, and it's a lot about Condi management, because he's got the Condi duration stacks for on the defensive side of things. When you're watching this gameplay right now, you see a lot of his damage is coming from the staff rather than the greatsword. They're pretty much using his greatsword really just to control and secure the downs that the range play on this AGG front or backline is able to secure. So right now they're running 10 melee, probably about 6 Guardians, 4 Warriors for AGG, and really they're, like Kyle said, they're just managing the fight. Their job is to kind of put a little bit of pressure on the back line, make sure that they can keep the enemy melee a little busy, but then once there's downs or lows from the AGG backline, the melee goes in, like as you can see right here, they're just securing the downs. And from that, they have a very good pace in the fight and can pretty much control exactly where they want to engage and when.
And is there a reason why they're using great swords instead of hammers? Because I know hammers is also an option as well that some guilds take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. There's guilds out there like specifically NS who's really honed in and made the hammer part of their meta. But the greatsword has a lot of different aspects that it brings to the table as well. And specifically
as they're
right
leaping
here,
in right now, yeah, exactly.
the mobility that the range that melee can cover, the speed that the melee can move at is greatly enhanced, and that's extremely good when you're going against a enemy backline that's pretty glassy because you can very quickly push in, put some pressure on the backline. Like they got far enough there on the south side that they were able to create a little bit of pressure on the backline, and then the AGG gank back there is also kind of securing the downs as the melee just pulls out. So the speed that the melee moves at is much faster with the greatsword than it is with the hammer.
Yeah, and also with the greatsword, I think it's the 5 skill. You're able to anyone that's really anywhere near you that doesn't have stability is going to get pulled into your group. And when you are especially a light armor class and get pulled into 10 guys pressing 1, you're going to die pretty quick.
One other thing to note about this specific Guardian, as they're pretty much empowering right here, getting ready for the next round. This Guardian, it seems like he's got Sigil of Fire, and I believe, I could be wrong, a Sigil of Air as well on his staff. And because of that, while he's sitting back at the range, kind of that 600 range of that staff 1, he's really able to get a lot of crits because of the stats on his build, but after those crits, he's getting those Sigil of Fire and Sigil of Air procs, which is really putting a lot of pressure without even having to be in melee distance.
Yeah, see right there, they just tried to pull in and see if they could get anyone. Luckily for IX, they all pretty much had stability, so no one got pulled, but that's a really easy way to produce it down. And the way that a lot of these matches go, especially at the at the kind of the higher levels, if it's two of the best guilds fighting each other, the way that it goes is really just a single down state can really snowball an entire round, and it's really hard to come back in these types of fights because numbers, if you're fighting 15v20, you're pretty much going to lose if the two guilds are even close to each other in skill and experience. So having responding to those downs with is really important.
One of the things you can notice, like pretty much every time that it's Stragon right here, right? Every time Stragon's switching to Greatsword, it's because their melee is in melee distance of the enemy players, or they're securing a down. Pretty much every time you see him swap over to Greatsword, they're gonna have enemy downs either right away or already there. And then he swaps almost all the time back to staff, gets some range pressure, puts out some pew pew with that wave of wrath. And
yeah, there he goes in right there with the spins on the down states, and the greatsword definitely does more damage, but by using the staff, he's able just ag in general, but specifically the Guardians are able to keep kind of a safe distance, but still output enough damage to produce downs, and then they can push in on those downs, and it's really hard to defend against.
Absolutely. And one of the downsides to running the greatsword versus running a hammer is the amount of blast finishers that you can get. Just because without the hammer, you're missing one of those very low cooldown blast. But as you can see, kind of by the style that Jericho drives AGG, they don't get into a lot. Like if you watch the party bar over on the side, the amount of condis and general engagement that melee is in enemy AoEs, it's very low percentage of the fight. They're pretty much just sitting back, waiting for opportunities, and then once the opportunities happen, they can push in and capitalize on the downs. Like just right there, this Guardian specifically is just kind of playing at range. Then there's a down, he goes in, and this whole time, I don't think a condition has even touched the party.
No, and something that Strigan does a really good job of it, I think, is something that it requires definitely experience in this game mode to be good at, is not just sticking on the driver, but playing, around the driver. He's creating downs around him, not necessarily just standing right on his heels, which can be really effective, don't get me wrong, but he's doing a really good job just playing off of the driver and trying to produce downs wherever he can. One thing that you mentioned about the lack of blasts is a really good point. For if a group with warriors on that obviously would have a warhorn, and Guardians all have hammers, they're able to get a blast from pretty much every single person in their front line, which means that anytime they regroup even remotely cleanly, they're going to get their health all the way back up pretty much instantly.
Absolutely. And if we talk about kind of the style of this AGG group in general, you can't see it too much, so maybe I can point it out in one of the following rounds. But the way that their melee is able to put pressure on the enemy backline, but not let themselves get too tunnel vision is a very key aspect to the fight and how they can control it, because by being able to disrupt the enemy backline, you're going to save yourself on some of the damage, because the enemies, they're going to be trying to get out of the way, and as a result, you're not going to be taking damage. But if you keep training down the enemy backline and you get tunnel visioned on them, then you're going to probably get some of your backline trained in the process as well. And that's one of Jericho's probably strengths, is that he's very good at putting pressure on the backline, but making sure that his backline is not getting trained as well.
Yeah, because the moment that you go all in on their backline, if the group that you're fighting is smart, they're going to go all in on yours, and it's really just a matter of who's able to produce that down the quickest, and who's able to get the rally off of the other kill. It happens all the time. Jericho does a really good job of exactly what you said, is pushing in on their backline and then peeling back and saving his own. That's part of what's really frustrating about fighting this guild.
Absolutely. And if you're a melee viewer right now and you've played in this what we call the big bomb meta, where glass necros and plus Condi duration is pretty much the key to every round, you know how frustrating it is when you get caught. Like, a lot of times there's nothing you can do, and that's one thing to point out that Stragon is doing a great job of, is he's using his skills preemptively. Like, he's not letting himself get caught in a well. He's using his purging flames when there's conditions that are going to be hitting him or his party, and he's not waiting until they do hit. And that's one of the things that really makes the difference in these fights, is just making sure your melee can stay alive. And at this point, because he's using his skills preemptively, whether it's absolute or renewed focus or purging flames, he's doing it in a way that keeps him alive and keeps the fight going, so that they can keep managing the fight.
Yeah, from someone who, myself, plays Frontline in this meta, it is extremely frustrating. There's just, 6 months ago, playing Frontline was significantly easier than it is now, in my opinion. There's just so much more damage that's being output, and if you are standing in the wrong place at the right time, right as Dragon gets a 7k whirl on that downstate, you're basically putting yourself in a real bad situation, and you got to manage your cooldowns and manage your cleansing really, really well, or you're just not going to last very long in the fight.
Absolutely.
And through this, I mean, we've seen probably like 3 or 4 rounds now. Strigon hasn't even come close to dying. Right there, he's standing in a well, but he's able to, use his shelter and still maintain focus on those downstates by using his staff. He doesn't, like I mentioned this already, but I haven't. I watched this through one time, but I haven't. I didn't really pay too much attention. You pay a lot more attention when you're talking about it. But he does a really good job just playing around the driver. He's seeking out downstates on his own, staff cleaving them and putting damage on them, rather than just tunnel visioning on the red target and moving with it, which is something that I think everyone does a little bit.
I do want to go back a little bit. I'm sure all of you guys can remember, just a couple seconds ago, you saw Stragon use his shelter inside a well when he's caught.
Yeah.
And that was one of the few mistakes that I actually saw when I watched this. And I'm sure Stragon, he would take that back or let you know. And it wasn't too bad of a mistake, because he wasn't taking really heavy hits. But that's one of the mistakes a lot of Guardians try to do in this meta, is when they're caught in wells, they try to use shelter and get out of it. And that's something that really is not going to help you, because wells are unblockable. And a lot of people forget that fact. And so when you go to shelter to block the damage, you're doing nothing. And that's one of those points where you just gotta go into renewed focus.
You do, of course, still get the heal from the shelter, but you don't get half of what shelter gives you, which is that I think it's a 3-second block, which is
Absolutely.
crazy. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in previous metas, where the main source of damage was Frontline pushing in and cleaving damage, shelter was extremely strong, because you could shelter and you were basically not taking any damage for that whole bomb, whereas now shelter's a little bit less useful, but still a very good skill, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, definitely. You just got to make sure that you're outside of the wells, or like when Stragon did it, he wasn't in like imminent danger of dying, and so shelter was probably, it could have been the right choice, could have been the wrong one. But that's an area where I definitely see a lot of inexperienced or less experienced Guardians kind of die, or when they get one pushed, it's because right after the big bomb, they go to shelter.
Yeah, and another thing, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of downs that are being created in this fight that aren't being created from the front line. It's gankers and I'm gonna be real basic here because there's could be people watching this that have never even seen a GvG before. But there's the front line, and then there's what we call the back line, which would be kind of necros and Ellies that are using ranged damage and ranged AoE bombs on where the front line is pushing or hopefully to create as much damage as possible. There's also another portion of the GvG. Most people in NA call it Gank Squad. People in EU call it Focus Party and stuff like that. But it's basically a smaller group of typically thieves and mesmers. I'm sorry, and recently rangers, since rangers have been doing really well recently in updates and stuff like that. I've actually been running rangers themselves. But what they're doing is they're kind of and the back trying to remain stealthy and focus out the enemy's back line or even front line that get stranded out, and that's able to produce downs away from where the front line is being at, and then it's basically whoever does a better job of responding to those downs is who secures them.
So, Kyle, would you want to talk counters to this possible playstyle?
Yeah, by all means, go for it.
So, right now, AGG is fighting IX, and in my mind, there's three specific things that IX could be doing differently to kind of give themselves a better advantage. If you look at all the rounds and you count how many downs the AGG's melee has specifically created against, well, the enemy melee, they've killed pretty much no melee versus melee. Every enemy melee death has been the result of their backline pretty much doing most of the work. AGG's melee is just managing the fight. They're going in and securing the downs. So first and foremost, you want to put a little pressure on their melee. If you're the enemy, casters, yeah, you want to put the big bombs to keep them honest. But a lot of your AOE's, like your meteor showers, your ice spikes, your eruptions, lava fonts, specifically elementalists, if you can put them past the AGG backline or past the AGG melee and put a lot of your AoEs on the enemy on the AGG backline, it kind of disrupts them and it forces them to come back, waste some dodge rolls, puts a little pressure on them because they're running so glassy that if you can get a couple of good AoEs off, they're gonna have to heal. It's gonna give your melee time to kind of regroup and take a break. So that would be my first and foremost counter to this, is just a little bit of playstyle change from your own casters. You got to put your AoEs.
Losing this round, it looks like actually. They've had a lot of guys go down, and they're trying to get power reses. I don't think they have any banners left. I think.
That round is over.
I think IX just won that round. But yeah, go ahead. Keep going. Go ahead.
Well, for that round specifically, AGG kind of got caught in that little bit of a tunnel vision gap where they were trying to put pressure on the enemy backline, but the enemy backline was doing a very good job of not having it. And because of that, the enemy backline was kind of able to take a page out of AGG's book and really create the downs and let the IX melee control the pace of the fight because they could just move from one down to the other.
So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So that first counter, it's something that most drivers say, hey, I want my meteor showers on the enemy melee. I want all my bombs. I want my staff marks. I want everything on the enemy melee. But in this type of meta, when the enemy's running so glassy on their casters, if you can put your Mark 5s or Mark 3s, just if you're a Necro, just put some of your marks down behind the AGG melee and maybe hit some of the casters, it can kind of control the fight and push it back into the middle of the arena. And that's one thing that AGG has specifically done. You don't see it quite too much in this footage, but you see it in a lot of the other fights where AGG is able to just push the enemy back into the water, like the water on the south side of the Obsidian Sanctum. And that's just because the AGG casters are putting a lot of their AoEs deep enough that the enemy casters are kind of hitting that and they're getting it, and so they have to keep backing up. And when you can separate the enemy melee from the enemy's casters, both of them have to end up pushing back away from where you are, and that's really how they get pinned up on the south side, the way that they've been shown to do in past GvGs.
Yeah, absolutely. And did the video just stop? Give us a second. That was weird. Anyway, um, yeah, absolutely. And what we're trying to do right now in fun is really, figure out what we can do to get a little bit closer to where this guild is at right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so outside of that first adjustment that you can do to kind of give yourself a better chance against this massive big bomb meta. What does Odinzu call it? He called it the broadside ships firing the
Oh
cannons at each
yeah,
other.
yeah, pirate ships, yeah.
It's the pirate ship meta, but if because the enemy is running so glassy on the casters, there's two other things you can do. The first one, like I already said, you put AoEs and try to disrupt the enemy backline a little more than usual. The second would be add a couple more of your focus party or gank. If you can do that and get some more pressure, you can force the enemy casters to tank up a little bit. And if you can force them to tank up a little bit, they're not going to be able to put out as much damage, and it might give your melee a little bit more of a breathing room. So that would be the second thing. Maybe add a couple gank, couple focus party. The third thing that you can do against this meta is really have the faster melee. If you can have a mobile melee that does not get caught in red AoEs, if they have the Condi clear to get out of AoEs, keep them from getting stuck and taking that massive damage, then they can keep moving. And by avoiding that damage, they can stay at higher health and put a little more pressure on the enemy backline because they can keep moving through those AoEs. So those are really the three things. You want to put more pressure on the enemy backline, either from AoEs of your own or from gank or focus party members, or have a faster, more mobile melee that can move and quickly put pressure on the enemy backline.
Yeah, and before this big bomb meta, you really could just kind of go super aggressive and just kind of go ham as it would be called. But the issue with that in this meta is if you decide to go ham, then and if you decide to go ham and they're striking, getting a little bit had to use his renewed focus there to get out, got a little bit caught behind, and they were bombing right on his feet. If you decide to go super aggressive in this meta and they realize it, then they're just going to drop their wells and start cleaving on their feet, and you can blow up faster that way than I think any other way in the game, from my experience.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's a driver in Tier 2 NA who can say that they haven't been one pushed, just
Yeah,
because a lot of
yeah,
times you try to go in and you try to say YOLO, let's just, as we called it in Hope, it was man mode. If you try to go man mode and just straight up push with all your AoEs, they're just gonna counter bomb and punch their feet,
yeah.
drop all their symbols, their wells, and you're not gonna last long if you overcommit.
Yeah, and the exactly, and the issue with that is it's so touch and go right now, because if you decide, if your guild, your driver decides that they're going to be pushing in, you're committing there that you're going to be trying to produce downs there. Otherwise, you just wasted that push and possibly got punished for it, as Ag just cleans up the rest of these downs here. It looks like this round's almost over.
So if you're a Guardian player or pretty much just a viewer, you might say that this this footage is one of the more boring Guardian POVs that you can watch. And I'll admit this footage is not the most exciting. It doesn't really get to showcase outstanding gameplay, but Stragon's playing the way that it needs to be played.
Yep.
They're just managing the pace of the fight, staying alive and securing
This is the
downs.
pirate ship going on right now. See how they're just kind of two groups weighing back and forth. See how the IX is straight in front of them right now, and they're just going to be kind of going back and forth and seeing who commits first, and trying to produce downs from a distance until they get a down state, and that's when someone's going to be able to push in. See right there, they almost pushed in, then they went back. Now they're re-empowering over there from IX. And see, there's the down state right there from the gang squad. Now the clash is going to happen because there's that down produced, and it's basically just this constant range pressure, and then swap back to pirate ships and melee. It kind of just goes back and forth. It's a cool little game, little way to play. I like the meta. I think it's somewhat fun. It just takes a long time to get used to. I'm still not used to it. I've been going way too ham in my gameplay.
It's a meta that tests your patience and is so focused on waiting until that first mistake is made, and then once that mistake is made, really being able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, something else I've noticed that Jericho and Ag does really well is those empower rotations are very strong. They will stop pretty much anywhere and just empower in your face because they have the confidence that their range pressure is going to be enough to, hold you back and get might back up to where, it should be at. And that's what allows for those staff cleaves to do as much damage as they do. He wouldn't be hitting for 1.5k on a staff cleave if he didn't have those 25 stacks of might like he has pretty much the entire round.
Let's talk about the way Stragon's using his cooldowns. AGG is maneuvering their melee in a way that they can really take advantage of their cooldowns. They're not using their cooldowns to pull out of a regroup or to get out of red. They're using a lot of their cooldowns offensively because they're able to preemptively move out of the AoEs. And instead of having to blow some of their cooldowns, like their stun breaks or their stabilities or their condi clear, whatever it is, they can have it on the push. And because they can make sure that they have stability, most specifically on pushes, it really helps their melee keep moving and keep the pressure up. Far more so than if they were going to use their stability to get out of red or to go regroup or something like that. Because the second that you start using your cooldowns defensively, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and because you aren't able to, we aren't able to upkeep stability 100% of the time. Thank God, the game would just be so stupid. But because if you pop your stability, running out of a well or running away from a bomb, then when you go back to push in, your stability either one isn't going to be there or two isn't going to last as long. So you're putting yourself at a risk when you decide to go offensively.
All right, so we see some empowers. There's that early static that always happens, and the leap on the veil. I really like the way the AGG leaps. Their way that they commit on the first push.
Striker just had to burn everything there.
But every time that they leap, it's with a purpose. They can leap. They're almost always within range of the enemy when they leap. And so that leap, while it is just a small skill, when you have 10 melee that are leaping, you're going to get some type of damage. And usually, almost always, at least force the enemy to blow some type of cooldowns, whether it's the wells or defensive cooldowns to go regroup. They can really get a good upper hand just by engaging and making sure that they're the first ones to hit.
Yeah, and also just something wanted to point out real quick. Obviously, we're watching this gameplay, and it's there goes Jericho's going down there as well as Strigon. They got a banner back up though.
That is a fast banner.
I don't know if they're going to be able to get yeah, I think he's back up.
They're going to need a full empower regroup. That would be
pretty impressive. Yeah, they're going to get the empowers going now.
They did lose 4 in that clash. That was big bombs. I mean, that's what we've been talking about. If you're from EU or you haven't played in this type of meta, it's glassy necros and a lot of immobilizes. And because of the immob and chill, you get stuck in the damage, and there's just nothing you can do unless you're running both passive and active condi clear.
Yeah, especially with the food that was coming out yesterday with the plus 25% condi duration. I was getting some what's it called, the thief thing, the venom share forever. Seemed like, and I'm a warrior. I have to really make sure to handle, to use my Warhorn 4 at the right times. Otherwise, I'm not going to last very long as Ag loses this round here. Something I wanted to point out too is we're obviously watching Ag just kind of beat up on IX, but IX did a really good job there as well, and they've been doing actually, obviously we on fun can't fight them because we're on the same server, but they've been doing a better job than we have at fighting the guilds that we both fought.
Yeah, they've really they've done a pretty good job of making sure that they have a good balance between their backline, their gank, and then their melee. Their melee is doing a pretty effective job of staying alive in the rounds that they have been taking, and their gank has been able to put some pressure on the enemy backline. And as you can see, like from the pirate ship battles that have been going on in these rounds, AGG has a lot of respect for the IX bomb, and that comes from the IX casters just being able to really take advantage of different situations. So as IX gets a little more experience playing this meta, you can kind of see them continue to improve.
Yeah, definitely. I hope to, and I hope I get some of their gameplay as well. I'd definitely like to see that. The reason why we decided to go with, why I decided to go with an Ag gameplay first is simply just because they were the first ones to send me a video. I do have some other gameplay as well. I've got some Guardian gameplay from INC Airstrike, and I've got some Necro gameplay from Noober from Ag. But I'd like to see some some other guilds. I don't want to have 2 Ag videos in a row or 2 Guardian videos in a row. So if you if you record your fights, send them my way, and I can definitely put them up here, and maybe I'll have Driggin, and maybe I won't. Just gonna depend on what class it is, and try to grab someone that knows a lot about the class. I know a little bit about all the classes, but I really specifically just play Warrior, so it's nice to have someone here that knows a little bit more about it. But I think we're gonna wrap this one up, and thanks for watching, guys.